Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And we will get our webinar up and running and started in just a moment. I see the number of people logging on to attend our webinar is quickly skyrocketing, so I just want to give a few of our additional attendees another minute to get themselves situated and logged in before we begin. And again, for those of you joining us today, this is Data Logger Basics for Building Performance Monitoring. All right, so let's jump right in. Selecting and deploying HOBO data loggers for building performance monitoring. I am your lovely host, Taryn Picard. I'm the sales manager here at Onsa Computer. The webinar details. So this webinar will run for approximately 40 minutes. We will leave about 15 minutes towards the end to answer many of your questions. I do want to reiterate a few times throughout this webinar, if we don't answer your specific question, please don't hesitate to reach out to our application team or our technical support team. A lot of times our customers have very unique applications and it's difficult for us to give a general answer that will work for everyone's application. So you certainly can reach out to us and speak to an expert who can tailor the best solution to meet your needs. Also, you can type in your questions on the side of the screen there if you have any questions that we might be able to get to during the webinar as well. And the webinar is being recorded. So a link will be sent out after the fact. You can rewatch this over and over again for your viewing pleasure. So quick overview, we'll talk about what is a data logger. We'll go through some common uses. And then of course, we'll highlight some key applications so you guys can kind of relate to how other customers might be using our loggers in similar situations. And then again, wrap up with some Q&A. So today's presenter is my colleague Shannon Ryerson. Shannon is our technical sales rep for the building performance monitoring world, but he is an expert in data logging, so he can speak to all of our different products. His, again, primary focus would be in building performance, but Shannon, you take it away. I know you can answer any questions anybody throws at you today.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the introduction, Taryn. And again, thank you for everyone for taking time out of your day to attend our webinar. I hope everyone's able to take away something from this. Before we get started, though, I would like to get a better feel of who is in our attendance, and I would like to start out with a poll question.
Great. So I have just launched the poll for everyone. And right away, I'm seeing a huge number of attendees today who are already using our HOBO data loggers. Woohoo! Thank you so much. We love to see that. And for those of you who are not using our data loggers, we're going to hope you cross over and start using our products because we think it's going to be really helpful for you. Just going to give it one quick second here, and then I'm going to close out the poll and share those results. And sharing the results with everybody. Here we go, a whopping 76 people currently using HOBO data loggers. That is excellent. Thank you so much. Shannon, take it away.
Great, thank you. And it's nice to see that we do have quite a mix of attendees in here. And again, with the people who are currently using our data loggers, I hope that there's something new that you learned within this webinar today. But yeah, let's get started. So what is a data logger? A data logger is basically an electronic instrument that records measurements at a set interval over a period of time. Typically, these are compact devices that are battery powered that usually come with some type of internal microprocessor data storage in one or more sensors. Those sensors could be internal or external. Data loggers can be deployed anywhere where you need to take measurements, whether that's indoors, outdoors, or underwater. And a lot of data loggers can record data for up to years at a time, unattended. So how do you use a data logger? There's really just a few simple steps to it. The first would be to download and install the software on your mobile device, such as a smartphone or a tablet, or on a computer or laptop. Then you would want to connect the data logger and configure your launch parameters. You would then place the data logger where you want to take these measurements. From there, after its deployment, you would reconnect the logger back to either your mobile device or your laptop to offload the data, and then you'll be able to read out that data file and analyze it within our software. Or you can also use third-party software such as Excel or anything that accepts a CSV or XLS file format. We offer two different types of data loggers, and those are state loggers and interval loggers. State loggers, what they do is they actually check the state of the input at every second. And then what they do is if they see a change in the state, they will record that with a time and date stamp. Typically with these, there's only two states. You get a 0 and a 1. Our interval loggers work a little bit differently. Interval loggers are constantly reading the input at the selected sample time, which is typically referred to as your logging interval, and it will store that reading in its memory with a time and date stamp on it. So, and again, state loggers, they do only have two states, which is a 0 or a 1. Depending on the application, that could, refer to motor on, motor off, light on, light off, something of that nature. The interval loggers will take a measurement at every interval, regardless if there has been a change or not. And the maximum input voltage on this is 2.5 DC voltage. So what are some common uses for data loggers? As you can see from this illustration, they can be used in a multitude of environments. Um, for example, on here, starting at the bottom, you can see where there's what looks like an image of the factory. They may need to monitor the water temperature as they discharge their treated wastewater into back into a river or a stream. Another option may be water level monitoring, where if you have any type of retention pond or some type of reservoir that you need to track the level of, you could do that. Another option would be with remote field monitoring stations, which you could use to monitor the current conditions out in your crops or your fields. From there, we also can monitor indoors as well. Some common measurements there that we see indoors are temperature and relative humidity, as well as occupancy and light on and off. Um, Also, another popular one with indoor measurements is obviously CO2. Um, we also offer some other loggers for monitoring field conditions, which could, again, be temperature, relative humidity, wind speed, light intensity, soil moisture, soil temperature, things of that nature. Essentially, you can deploy a data logger anywhere data is needed in where the convenience of battery power is preferred. So what are some different types of indoor measurements that we can take? For the environmental side, again, it would be temperature, relative humidity, carbon dioxide, air velocity, as well as VOCs. From the energy side, we offer plug load loggers. You can monitor kilowatts, kilowatt hours, watt hours, amps, volts, AC DC current. As you can see on the list, there's quite a multitude of energy parameters that we can monitor. Also, timely use loggers. And again, this one would be lights on or off, motor on or off, state changes, as well as occupancy. And as you can see here, we have a few different ways that you can access the data from our data loggers. The first option is our USB style loggers. Um, these are designed for short-term trending loggers with manual offload. And the way these work is that you connect the logger to your computer with a USB cable. And you do that for your configuration as well as your data offload. The next option we have for communication would be our Bluetooth loggers. And these work with a mobile device, again, such as a smartphone or tablet. And all you need to do is get within 100 feet line of sight from the logger. You'll be able to connect to it to do your configuration and data offload. Also, with our new MX gateway that we just released for our Bluetooth loggers, this will now give you remote access to the data. And what the gateway does is it actually pushes the data from the Bluetooth loggers up to our cloud-based platform, HOBOlink. With that being a cloud-based platform, you have access to that from any device that has a built-in web browser. So again, your smartphone, your tablet, your laptop, your computer. Um, and finally, we have our web-based systems. These ones are designed for long-range wireless internet access. With most of our systems, they can either accept 5 or 10 wired sensors, as well as up to 50 wireless sensors. And again, all the data from this would be pushed to our cloud-based platform, HOBOlink, which would give you that remote access and visibility to it. So how do you use a USB data logger? Again, as you can see here, there's just a few simple steps to it. You need to connect the logger to a computer with the USB cable to configure and launch it. You would then deploy the logger in place. At the end of the deployment, you would then once again connect it back to your computer with the USB cable running our HOBOware software. And then from there, within the software, you'll be able to do your plotting and analysis. Again, within our software, you do have the ability to export those data files out as a .csv or .xls file, as I know some people prefer to do their analysis within programs such as Excel. And what we see here are just a few examples of some of our USB loggers and some of our more common USB loggers. The one you see at the top is actually our UX 100-011A temperature and relative humidity logger. And again, this one does have a built-in thermistor as well as a relative humidity sensor. Uh, the next one, top right, is our UX 90001 UX 90004 and 005 occupancy data loggers. These ones will measure light on and off as well as occupancy within that room. Um, the bottom left logger is our U12-012 temperature, relative humidity, and light data logger. So within this unit, you will get a temperature reading, a relative humidity reading, as well as an ambient light level reading. This logger actually has a fourth channel on it, which is an analog port that you see on the right-hand side of it, which will allow you to connect a fourth sensor to it. So whether that's an external temperature sensor, or even if you have a third-party sensor that outputs some type of 4 to 20 milliamp signal or a VDC, you'd be able to connect it into that and be able to record that data as well. The center logger is our UX 90001 state logger. And again, this is just going to give you a reading of a 0 or a 1, and that would be dependent on a state change. And finally, in the bottom right-hand corner, it's actually one of my personal favorite loggers. This is our UX 120006M, which is a 4-channel analog data logger. This one allows you to connect up to 4 external sensors to this, and we offer a multitude of sensors for this, whether it's monitoring current or voltage or temperature. We have a suite of sensors that will work with this logger as well. Next, I'd like to briefly go over our Bluetooth enabled loggers. With these ones, instead of connecting it to a computer to do your configuration and data offload, you actually use a mobile device running our free app. For iPhones, that would be HOBOmobile, and for Android, that would be HOBO Connect. And as long as you're within 100 feet line of sight range, you'll be able to connect to any loggers that are within that range. As you can see on that picture to the left, you do get a nice little graphical readout right on your phone showing the data points from its deployment. And you also have the ability to export that data file out of the app as, again, a CSV file, an XLS file, or a HOBO file. If you choose to export it as a HOBO file, you would then be able to import that into our HOBOware software to do your plotting and analysis there. But as you can see from the diagrams here, it's a relatively easy process to get these set up and export the data out of them. So some of the capabilities of our app is, again, any loggers that are within range from your mobile device, you will see that pop up on the app as a logger you can connect to configure or offload the data. Again, you will be able to see a graphical readout from the deployment and also give you the ability to share that data file. And again, that picture to the left outlines the different file formats that you can export that. If you notice, the very last option says graph an image on it. That one will actually export a PDF document of the graphical readout within the app, where sometimes that may be beneficial just to kind of be able to show a graphical readout of what went on during the deployment. So for build and performance loggers, we do offer a few in the Bluetooth family. The first one on the top that you see there is our MX1101. This one, again, operates off of Bluetooth technology. It will give you a temperature reading as well as a relative humidity reading. This particular logger, as well as all the loggers on this page, do utilize our free HOBOmobile app for configuration and data offload. The next logger we see on here would be our HOBO Pendant MX temperature and light data logger. And again, this one, not only does it give you a temperature reading, it will also give you a light level reading as well. And that measurement is taken in lux. And lastly, at the bottom, we have our MX1102, which will give you a temperature reading, a relative humidity reading, as well as a carbon dioxide reading. These loggers, I see these typically used in a lot of office settings and places of that nature, just to be able to monitor carbon dioxide levels. There has been quite a few studies that have been done out there where monitoring carbon dioxide levels is important, just because as your CO2 levels rise, that can cause your workers to not be as energized or productive as if they're more within acceptable levels. And what we see here are two of our newest Bluetooth loggers that we just released, which are the MX1104 and the MX1105. The MX1104 has a built-in temperature, RH, and light sensor on it, and it also gives you an optional analog channel on it. So you could connect another sensor up to it, whether that's to monitor current, temperature, voltage, differential pressure, stuff of that nature. The next one to that would be our MX1105, which looks very similar to the MX1104, except this one doesn't have any built-in sensors on it. This one has 4 analog ports on it, so you could connect up to a multitude of sensors to it depending on what the job or application calls for. And again, that could be, temperature sensors, current sensors, voltage sensors, things of that nature. These are indoor loggers only, so you certainly wouldn't want to deploy outdoors, and you need to make sure that they are in non-condensing environments. And what we're seeing here is actually a picture of the MX gateway, and I briefly touched on this at the beginning of the presentation. What the MX gateway does is it actually picks up the Bluetooth packets from any loggers that are within that 100 feet line of sight range. And then it pushes that information up to the cloud. Now, the gateway itself does need to be connected to the internet, and that can either be with a Wi-Fi connection or an Ethernet connection. If you connect it via Ethernet, it does accept power over Ethernet. If your setup doesn't allow for PoE, we do ship it with a AC power supply, and also if you're using Wi-Fi, you would need to make sure it's plugged into AC power. The gateway, again, does need to be within 100 feet line of sight range from the loggers and able to connect to them, but it is compatible with all of our HOBO MX data loggers. So some of the benefits to using HOBOlink, our web-based system, is that you get cloud access to your data. And again, that you can access that data from any device that has a built-in web browser on it, whether that's a laptop, cell phone, tablet, netbook, things of that nature. You do get 24/7 access to your data. You can verify that your system is running. You can set up and manage all of your alarms and notifications right over the web, and you can also set up for automated data delivery. So if there's any particular colleagues or partners that need to receive this information on at a set time frame, whether it's daily, weekly, you could set up where those data deliveries automatically email them those data files. With our web-based systems, they can communicate to the cloud with either a cellular, Wi-Fi, or Ethernet connection. And all of our RX units or web-based units can accept our HOBOnet wireless sensors, connecting up to 50 of them. So our HOBO RX station provides remote access to site-specific environmental data anywhere at any time over the internet. Our HOBOnet sensors, those have a range of about 1,500 feet to 2,000 feet line of sight range to be able to report their data back to the RX. The wireless sensors themselves do form a mesh network, which is self-healing. So if for some reason one of the sensors doesn't have a clear path back to the RX or there's any obstructions in way, it can actually pass its signal through other sensors in line, making up to 5 hops to get its signal back to the RX 3000. This will give you remote access to your data and your current conditions. And we also allow you to create customizable dashboards for analysis. So within your system, if there is any measurements that are particularly important to you, you can actually have that data pushed right over to your dashboard and be able to have instant access to that information. We have a wide array of widgets that you can use for it, whether they're line graphs, bar graphs, wind roses, thermostats, or speedometers. Depending on what type of measurement you're taking, you can choose a widget that would be appropriate for that. And speaking of widgets in the dashboard, here is a screenshot of a dashboard that was set up. And again, as you can see, they are utilizing quite a few of our widgets here. We have, I can see some line graphs. I see our speedometers on here, as well as bar graphs and our thermostats. Again, these are customizable, so you can set them up to your likings. So why use data loggers? Again, data loggers are important if you're trying to do any type of monitoring to determine short-term or long-term trends. Some typical users would be, facility managers and engineers, where they need to monitor occupancy comfort as well as in air quality. And typically they require these to be easy to use, easy to deploy, and reusable. Also, like site managers or property managers, they may need to monitor more of HVAC systems, lighting systems, for utilization and scheduling, specifically with automated systems. Um, we also have maintenance and operations managers who may need to validate that their building monitoring systems are working correctly. Um, and typically they would need flexible access to this data, which again, our cloud-based platform would give that to them, as they would be able to access that data from any device with a web browser. And lastly, we have IT, quality, labs, warehouses, cold chain storage managers. Typically them, they typically just do storage monitoring, where they would need to make sure that their storage facilities or cold rooms are within the recommended temperature ranges for them. Um, and obviously, this is due to energy conservation awareness, where if your all your employees leave the building at 5 o'clock at on a weekday, there's no sense in having the heat blasting after that. So typically what they'll do is they can set their BMS to not have the room be as hot or as cold as if there was occupancies within there. So next we have some options for energy monitoring, and as well as the typical users and applications that would apply to this. For energy consultants and auditors, typically they're looking for something that is fast and easy for when they're doing, pre and post comparisons, if they're doing any upgrades to their HVAC systems, or swapping out um, incandescent bulbs for LED lights or something like that. It's always nice to verify that, when you do make those changes, that you are seeing those changes or those savings on there. Also with performance contractors for building commissioning, they typically do a wide range of measurements, where again, they may need to monitor an HVAC system, within the incoming air, the outgoing air, the mixed air, um, as well as a lot of times I see with that differential pressure monitoring, just to make sure that their building is holding the pressure within an acceptable range. Um, we also have building commissioners who would typically be doing more of M&V studies. And with those, typically, they like to use a lot of our small loggers, just because they're small, easy to deploy, portable. And, we do offer a lot of loggers that we like to consider toolbox items. One of them, again, being our UX 120-006M, just for the fact that that one is the 4-channel data logger that would allow you to plug in uh, 4 external sensors, and that would could be dependent on what the job calls for. So with that, I'd like to take a break here and launch another poll question for you.
Great. Thank you, Shannon. I've launched the poll for everyone. And we're seeing the results coming in quite quickly. It looks like most of the people joining us today are doing energy monitoring projects. I'll give it one more second here, because indoor air quality is quickly climbing the ladder as well. All right, so let me share the results with you all. Looks like about half of our attendees today are on the energy project side of the world, and then a large chunk followed right behind in the indoor air quality and HVAC world. So thank you so much for sharing your feedback. Take it
Great,
away,
yeah,
Shannon.
thank you, thank you. All right, so what I'd like to do here is actually just get into some application stories. And the first one I'd like to start out with actually took place out in San Francisco. After quite a few days of heavy rainfall, there was some damage to a fifth floor residence in the apartment complex. Um, So what they needed to do is actually go out and perform daily remediation checks just to make sure that they weren't having any mold growing and that they were taking the necessary steps to prevent mold growing. So their solution for this was actually our MX1101 Bluetooth temperature and relative humidity data logger. And what they did is they actually went around to the units that were affected. They had placed these loggers within those dwellings. They had set the data loggers to record every 10 minutes over a 2-month period. Um, this continuous logging allowed them to capture the dynamic moisture trends that they were seeing. And again, with this being a Bluetooth logger, they didn't need to go in and disturb the residents to read out the data. Typically, it was just a matter of standing right outside of the door. They'd be able to connect to the logger to read out the data and then relaunch the logger as well. And with doing this study, they're actually able to avert serious mold problems as a result to their vigilant monitoring and data analysis from this. And again, it was pretty convenient for the fact that they didn't have to go in and disturb the residents in these areas to be able to get the data from these loggers. So one of the benefits to our Bluetooth loggers there. The next application I would like to talk about here is actually the Hunter Museum of American Art in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Beautiful facility they have here, and it actually comprises of 3 unique sections, but all under one roof, forming about a 77,000 square foot facility. This facility houses a lot of important works of art that they make available to the public, and preserving those items so future generations can enjoy them as well. So with this, the museum must maintain a stable interior climate to prevent unfavorable environmental conditions that could harm the objects, but also keep it at a relatively comfortable level for the attendees there as well. So with preservation, environmental control can be a challenge. Again, balancing the conditions for what the artifacts need to see versus what's comfortable for attendees can be challenging. So for many years, they're actually relying on their internal climate control computer system. Recently, they had discovered that their data logging portion of this was malfunctioning and it could not be repaired. So instead of going out and purchasing a whole new monitoring system, they realized that they could actually just purchase a few of our MX1101s to be able to record and store the historical data from this site. And again, they had used our MX1101s for this, and by leveraging the power of Bluetooth low energy, the museum staff could download the readings wirelessly from up to 100 feet away, leaving the artifacts inside the glass cases undisturbed. Now, this was beneficial because when one of the museum's glass sculptures began to develop a crack on it, they're actually able to take the data from the logger that they had deployed within this pedestal and show that the temperature and relative humidity was within the acceptable conditions, and that crack was likely caused just due to an inherent flaw. The next application I'd like to talk about was actually an energy study. And this was done by Rob Lovett, who is an energy manager for the Penn Harris Madison School District in Indiana. And he actually uses our portable U12-012 data loggers to record temperature, relative humidity, and light intensity. He deploys these loggers for 2 weeks periods at various locations throughout the school, which are either in known or suspected problem areas, or just to conduct random checks to verify that their equipment is operating and functioning correctly. Rob also uses the HOBOs for routine verification of equipment operation, such as their energy management system, just to ensure that that's starting up and shutting down as scheduled. They did need to maintain a comfortable temperature range of 68 to 72 degrees when that building is occupied. Now, in the spring, summer, and fall, he uses these loggers to look at humidity. His goal here is to run air conditioners the minimal amount of time necessary to achieve a comfortable RH reading, which is right around 40%, and also to avoid any conditions that could lead to mold problems. Due to Rob's dedicated testing and data collection, the analysis certainly had paid off for the school district. From January 2007 to December of 2010, the PHM School Corporation had realized a savings of over $2 million due to Rob's dedication to these monitoring programs. So as you can see there, that is quite a bit of savings for just taking just some standard temperature and relative humidity readings within the school district. Now I'd like to discuss some energy monitoring with you, and what we're actually looking at here is our kilowatt hours monitoring kit. Um, One of the benefits about this, and one reason why I really like this, is because this allows you to compare apples to apples of your energy uses compared to how your utilities company actually charges you uh, for power use. With this device, it simply comprises of one of our state loggers, as well as a watt node and some current transformers depending on what the amp draw is from the circuits or the panel that you're monitoring. These kits start at a cost of $426. Um, and they're really easy to set up, use, and offload with just a simple USB cable right to your computer running our HOBOware Pro software. And here is just a little basic diagram of an install of this inside a service panel. As you can see, on a three-phase system, you would need to monitor each of those legs. There is also a voltage lead set that you would need to tap into this. But basically, the watt node, what it does is it calculates the kilowatt hours and outputs a pulse to our state logger. In turn, the state logger itself will be able to display the kilowatt hours used in this. Um, and if you ever have any doubts about your ability to work in an electrical cabinet, it is definitely recommended that you have a trained and licensed electrician to do the install with this. And also, you may need to refer to your local building codes, as some states do require, again, that this work is performed by a licensed electrician. So with that being said, we actually had a company, MCD, which is a printing company, who was interested in tracking the electrical energy used at their printing facility. And the reason being is that they wanted to lower their energy consumption during peak demand hours. And on top of that, they also needed remote access to this data. And our solution for them was actually our RX3000 remote monitoring system, which they use this to track the facility's energy use using the plant's existing wireless network. The information from this logger is displayed in near real time on our HOBOlink cloud-based platform. And they had set this unit up to record at 2-minute logging intervals around the clock. They did take advantage of our remote alarms and notifications feature within HOBOlink. And what they did is set up an alarm to receive alarms when their energy usage had exceeded its limits. The result of this tracking allowed for them to have a low cost, convenient method for managing energy uses remotely. And the estimated payback for the system was just under 2 years for this. So, well worth the investment in that. And next, I'd like to talk about some HVAC applications with our loggers. What you see here again is our UX 120006M multi-channel data logger. This one can accept up to 4 sensors, and what you're seeing here is actually 4 temperature sensors within an HVAC system. And they'd use this to monitor the incoming air, the outgoing air, monitor it at mixum, um, the monitor that at the mixing valve as well. And this is one of the most critical and prevalent parameters across the spectrum, the full spectrum of an HVAC setup would be the temperature monitoring. You can really learn a lot about the performance of your HVAC system just by taking temperature measurements at strategic locations. And again, with this, some of the options are monitoring the outside air, the mixed air, your return air, your supply air, the discharge air, chilled water, condensed water, heating water, or temperature stratification. And what you are seeing in this graph here is that the data collected demonstrates that during an occupied hours, the controls kept the space within the dashed line range in the graph, which is just about between 68 to 72 degrees. During unoccupied periods of time, the control system allowed the zone temperatures to rise or fall outside that narrower band to conserve energy, but also maintained the temperature range between 60 degrees and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So again, for our in-air quality Bluetooth data loggers, we do have our MX1102, which is our temperature, relative humidity, and CO2 data logger. Again, you would need to be within 100 feet line of sight to be able to connect to this with the free mobile app. Um, And on top of that, you also will be able to get a nice visualization readout right on your mobile device. We do offer free cloud-based storage within HOBOlink as well. So if you are using any of our remote monitoring systems, you can have the data from your MX loggers through the app be automatically pushed up to our cloud-based platform, HOBOlink, um, for storage. That would allow you, if you ever need to go back and look at some historical data, you could just export it right out of the cloud as well. So again, some of the benefits of using our Bluetooth loggers is ease of access to your data when the loggers are in hard to reach places. The diagram here is a good example of that. Sometimes, you need to stick a logger up inside a vent to take a measurement. So as opposed to having to pull out the ladder to climb up there and access a logger, you just need to get within that 100 feet line of sight range and you'll be able to connect to it to perform the configuration and data offload procedures. And just another side note, the Bluetooth Low Energy smart devices continually advertise their presence and will be detected by any master device that is within scanning range. Again, your master device would be either your cell phone or your tablet, whatever device you're using to run that free HOBOmobile app. And next, I'd like to actually talk about our light and occupancy loggers. Uh, Light and occupancy data loggers are well suited for investigating opportunities related to lighting controls and verifying that proper operation of system and controls that are already in place. Lighting is a major contributor to total energy costs, typically representing between 20% to 50%. So shifting to energy efficient lighting is generally considered the easiest and most profitable investment compared to other energy saving opportunities applicable to commercial buildings. And now what this logger would allow you to do is you could place it, inside like a conference room or something like that. And especially if it's on an automated system. And what this logger would allow you to do is verify that when there's people in the room, that the lights are on, and also that when people had left the room, that the lights shut off as scheduled. Typically sometimes they'll set like a 15-minute delay where when that internal system doesn't see any more occupancy after 15 minutes, it will automatically shut those lights off. This logger would allow you to verify it. And rather than logging light levels at regular intervals, these only take a measurement when the conditions change. So again, this would be more of a state logger. Um, the interval-based approach conserves energy to lengthen the study, and it provides a simple visualization of usage. And we actually had the California State University at Long Beach utilize these loggers for a project. They had determined that some of their occupancy sensors were malfunctioning. And what was happening is that the sensors would leave the lights on, and that was unintentionally wasting kilowatt hours in the process. So, so set with a usual occupancy schedule that spans from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, it quickly became clear that there was an issue. As you can see in the chart above, taken from the study, it contains a graph depicting the entire monitoring period. And the energy savings opportunity is clearly evident based off this graph. Note that the lights were always left on, even when the space was occupied during the evenings and weekends, which is clearly going to be a waste of energy. Um, Sensors in rooms like that were malfunctioning, uh, the sensors in those rooms that were malfunctioning were promptly replaced, and that actually led to an annualized savings of about 124 kilowatt hours per year, or roughly $160,000 in energy savings. And with that, that actually takes us to the end of our presentation. So what I would like to do now is open it up to some Q&A.
Great, thank you, Shannon. So a couple of questions regarding our plug load logger, and since each of these questions are a little bit different, I was just kind of hoping you could give a high level overview of, when someone might choose to use the plug load logger over the KWH kit.
Absolutely. And the plug load logger is actually a very useful tool. And what that's more designed for is any type of piece of equipment that would plug into an AC wall outlet, as long as it's 120 volts. And what you basically do is you would plug, say it's a vending machine or something like that. You would plug the vending machine into the plug load logger, and then you plug the plug load logger into the wall. Right on the plug load logger itself, it will give you a readout of your kilowatt hours used, the amp draw, and your voltage as well. So that can actually be very convenient if you have several vending machines in your facility, or water chillers or things of that nature. So as opposed to having to go into your panel and possibly power everything down to set up one of those kilowatt hours monitoring kit, it's just as simple as placing that plug load logger in line between the piece of equipment you're trying to monitor and your wall outlet.
Great, thank you, Shannon. And one of the other questions was, does the plug load logger also include peak KW?
It does not include peak KW on the LCD screen on it, but once you export the data out of the plug load logger into HOBOware, you will be able to apply filters within HOBOware to see what your peak usage was, as well as your minimum, your maximum, and even your average kilowatt hours usage.
Great. So a couple of questions here, and maybe I can answer it instead of you, Shannon. So just to kind of explain how the MX Bluetooth loggers work, they are loggers that sensors, some of them have loggers that are loggers with sensors built directly into them. And
Mhm.
other versions of the MX loggers, you can plug a sensor hardwired to it. So you can actually plug it into the logger. there aren't wireless sensors that communicate back to those Bluetooth loggers. There's those wireless sensors Shannon was speaking about are on our HOBOnet side. So maybe Shannon, if you want to just kind of talk about the difference between the MX and then the HOBOnet side of our wireless solutions again.
Yeah, absolutely. So with our Bluetooth loggers, they either will have built-in sensors on them, as Taryn had mentioned, or you could plug in external hardwired sensors to them. A good example was our MX 1104 and 1105, those two new Bluetooth loggers that we just had released. And again, as Taryn said, we don't have wireless sensors that connect to the logger themselves, but those Bluetooth loggers will be able to report the data from those sensors wired into them, either to your mobile device or to the MX gateway, as long as either of those are within 100 feet line of sight range. Um, with our HOBOnet sensors, those only work with our RX units. So whether it's our RX 2100s or our RX 3000s. Those ones, as opposed to working on a Bluetooth signal, they actually utilize the 900 megahertz frequency. So with that, you're going to get much longer ranges. And also the 900 megahertz frequency is a much more robust signal than Bluetooth. So a little more capable of traveling through, shrubbery or any type of obstacles like cubicle walls or things of that nature.
Great, thanks, Shannon. A couple of questions here about full panel monitoring or monitoring multiple panels.
Mhm.
And we didn't really touch too much upon it during the presentation, but our EG4100 series might be a good solution for customers as well, unless they wanted to try to set up individual watt nodes at each of those panels. Do you want to talk about a little bit about the options of using the EG4100 series or um, going forward with what we offer today, either with HoboNet or the RX 3000?
Absolutely. So with the kilowatt hours monitoring kit, that's more so designed if you wanted to either measure your panel as a whole, or if there was a specific circuit on that panel that you wanted to monitor. So you'd only be able to take one of those measurements at a time. With our EG4100 series, we actually offer those in a 15 input and a 30 input model. So depending on the phase setup of your panel and the circuits, with our 15 input version of that, you could monitor 15 individual single phase circuits or 5 three-phase circuits with that unit. And then again, on the flip side, with our 30 input one, you could either monitor 10 three-phase circuits or 3 single-phase circuits. That unit is definitely, I feel like that becomes a little more beneficial if you're trying to monitor multiple circuits, just because you're connecting all those current transducers back to one device, and you're able to see the data from all those CTs in one localized area. The EGs themselves actually have a built-in web server on them. So their design was actually to be connected to the internet with either an Ethernet cable or an optional USB to Wi-Fi adapter. The EG, like I said, does have a built-in server on it, so you can actually access that information by just typing in the unique IP address to your EG within a web browser, and you'll have direct access to the information inside of that EG. You do get a graphical readout on there, which is basically taking a reading every second, and you will see that readout right on the line chart within the server.
Great, thank you, Shannon. So another question that I think could apply to multiple customers. So I'm going to phrase your question a little bit more general, but we have a customer saying, I have really thick marble walls, lots of square footage. When would I decide to go with the Gateway and the MX loggers versus HoboNet and the RX 3000? I mean, what would really make sense? So maybe you can help to kind of explain that in general, how someone would choose between those two systems.
Yeah, and with that, you really a lot of that depends on how many different measurements you need to take and how far apart are each of these measurements going to be. Again, with our Bluetooth loggers, you are limited to that 100-foot range between the logger and your mobile device or the logger and the gateway. And that is line of sight. So if there's any type of walls or obstructions in the way, and especially in large facilities, sometimes that may require running multiple gateways within the same facility. Um, and that's where HoboNet can actually become a benefit. Just the fact that again the HoboNet sensors operate on that 900 megahertz frequency, so you're getting 1,500 feet to 2,000 feet line of sight range. The 900 megahertz frequency also does travel a little bit better through obstructions. But again, there is always going to be some type of signal degradation as it's passing through objects and obstructions. So really, it'd be a matter of just kind of sitting down, figuring out what exactly you're trying to monitor, kind of get an idea of how far these sensors are going to be apart from each other. And then that would really help us determine which solution would be better, a Bluetooth-based one or our HoboNet-based systems.
Great. Thank you so much, Shannon. And just a reminder to everyone, we will send out a recording of this webinar. So if you had technical difficulties or if you weren't able to stay for the whole webinar, certainly that will be sent out to you and you can rewatch the webinar if you choose. Um, if you don't mind, Shannon, one other good question that's come up, and I think it's important to explain to the group, is really just talking about the MX loggers, how they can be used as a standalone logger, but that you do also have the ability to back up your data to the cloud if you'd like. So it's kind of an additional benefit or feature that we don't really talk too much about, and I think it's important to share because that is a question a few customers have asked. If I'm sending someone else to the site, they're manually collecting the data off of the loggers, and we don't have a gateway there. Can that still be stored in the cloud? So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and one of the nice features within our Hobo mobile app as well as Hobo Connect is you can actually share your data to Hobo Link. You would need to create an account, but it is free to create a Hobo Link account as well as register any of your devices. And what that allows is when you offload the data from an MX logger to your phone, and you have that option to send it to the cloud. Once you establish an internet connection, it will push that data right up to the cloud. That way, your fellow colleagues or associates would be able to log on to your HoboLink account page and be able to export the data right out of the cloud, as opposed to having you email it to them. Um, and on top of that, you can give just public access view to any of your colleagues where they can go in, they can view data, they can export data, but they can't make any changes to any of the configurations that you had set up within HoboLink.
Great. And I guess just one last question in general. So talking about our Hobo, our different platforms here with different software. So we have HoboWare Pro, which does allow some different data analysis as well. Can customers who are using the MX loggers or even the RX 3000 still use our HoboWare Pro software?
Yep, absolutely. So within HOBOmobile, you do have the ability to export the data out of there as a Hobo file. That would allow you to import it into either HoboWare or HoboWare Pro to do your plotting and analysis. With our remote monitoring stations, such as our RX 3000s or RX 2100s, you can also export that data out of HoboLink as a Hobo CSV file and then import that into HoboWare to do your plotting and analysis. Um, HoboLink itself does have a nice graphical feature to it where with our RX stations, you can actually view line graph data from any sensors you have connected to it for the past day, past week, or past month. Any historical data you would need to export out of there and then open that up in either HoboWare um, or again, any other program that accepts CSV or XLS file formats.
Great. Thank you so much, Shannon. And with that, we're pretty much coming to the conclusion. So I just wanted to stress thank you all so much for your questions. There were lots and lots and lots of questions that came through. So I do apologize if we weren't able to answer your specific questions, but I would encourage you at the end of this webinar, we will ask if you'd like to be contacted by one of our application experts. Again, they can really tailor the best solution for your specific needs or answer very specific questions you may have. So certainly say yes if you'd like to have one of us follow up with you if we didn't get a chance to answer your question right now. And then again, please don't hesitate to reach out to us as well. We are available. If you need our applications teams, we are available from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And our technical support team, if you already have the loggers, are available till 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please feel free to reach out to us. We want to help you. We want to be able to provide you with the support you're looking for and make sure if you have the loggers, they're working and doing what you need them to be doing. And if you don't have the loggers, we really want to ensure that you're getting what's going to work best for your application. So with that, we will come to an end. Again, thank you all for joining us today. And really, we want to tell everyone to stay safe out there. Onset is still open and operating during this very interesting times we are all living in. But we want to remind you all to stay safe, and we are here if you need us.
So again, yes, thank you everyone for taking time out of your day to join us. I hope everyone was able to get some valuable information out of that. And if you do have any other questions or concerns, again, my contact information was up on the screen. Feel free to give me a call or any of my colleagues as well. We're all more than happy to help.